Shalom, shalom. Can everybody hear me? Just want to make sure the recording is picking up the sound. All right, Baruch Hashem. So we are here again for our Niddah Limud, the secret of the five bloods. And we have to give a shout out to Spike Lee, who just received his Lifetime Achievement Award at some film award show within the past few days. I saw a headline, I think, and Spike Lee had a movie a few years ago about, I believe it was World War II, uh, about Black soldiers in World War II called The Five Bloods. So, but here we are in Mishnah Niddah, Mishnah Niddah, and we are decoding the secret of the five bloods. We'll start with the text. So here's our Mishnah Niddah, chapter 2. Kol hayad hamarba livdog ben nashim משובחת ומעם נשים פתיחת סקס. החירשת והשוטה והסומה ושד טרפה דעתה, אם יש לכן פיחות, מתכנות אותן וכן אוכלות בה תרומה. You can see the text. דרק בנות ישראל משמשות בשני עדים, אחד לו ואחד לה. הצנויות מתקנות, לכן שלישי לתקן את הבית. So we see any hand frequently examining among women is praiseworthy, but among men shall be cut off. And I will stop the share just to remind everybody. This, the translation on the screen is from Safaria, but I am reading from our Mishnah Elucidated, our translations here. So the wording may be a little different. I'm reading from the physical book, but I do have it on the screen for those who would like to follow along with the Hebrew. So any hand frequently examining among women is praiseworthy, but among men shall be cut off. The Mishnah categorizes different types of women, 4 types of women who cannot perform their own internal examinations, requiring the assistance of others to immerse in the mikvah after examination. So these 4 types: HaChereshet, the deaf mute; Wehashota, the deranged woman; Wehasuma, the blind woman; Weshenitrefa da'ata, and the one whose mind is disturbed by trauma or severe illness. And it says if they have competent women attending them who properly prepare them, then they may eat the terumah. Derek Beinot Yisrael. The way of the daughters of Israel is to engage in, again, I'm reading a different translation from the book here. The way of the daughters of Israel is to engage in zivu or yichud with their husbands with 2 cloths, one for him and one for her. Hatsnuyot, the modest women, prepare 3 cloths for themselves to prepare the house. Letaken et habayit. I love that term. Setting the house in order. It says ibim. So beshne ibim or shleshi ibim, the plural of the edot, the examination cloth. What's interesting is these cloths are literally translated to witnesses. So they are called to be witnesses. And when we think of witnesses, we can think of pillars. So why 2? Why even 3? We think about Etz Chaim, the 3 pillars, left, right, and middle. And often, as our Master Chief Rabbi Pentecost often explains, when we see what seems to be a machloket or what may be wrongfully interpreted as a disagreement or even a contradiction, chas v'shalom, in the oral tradition, we know that it is not to show contrasting or opposing viewpoints, but to reveal different levels and layers of perspective, considering, as always, the Pardes, the Peshat, Remez, Josh, and Sod. One moment, someone is entering the room. Shalom, shalom. Welcome. I see 2 users. I don't know the names. I don't see the names on the profile. One says user, and one is Samsung SM-S731. So welcome. If you would like to come off mute and let us know who you are, that would be great. Or you can leave it in the chat or change the name on your profile so we know who's here. So again, when we see a machloket or differing views, we know that it is not a contradiction, it is not an opposition, it is offering the nuance of different perspectives. So as we know famously, we see sometimes different views between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. One moment, someone else is entering. All right, shalom, shalom. Welcome, Akoti Shula, Rabbinate Shula. I'm about for joining.
Shalom, shalom, Ima HADASSAH. Toda.
So we know that Beit Hillel is more of the mainstream perspective, and Beit Shammai will bring out more of the esoteric dimension, speaking on behalf of the nusak of the Mekubalim, the elites, the Bnei Aliyah, the Idiot. Another wonderful illumination and elucidation brought about by our Master Chief Rabbi Pinchas is the concept of the Idiot. Notice how it echoes the Edot, the witness of the cloth, the examination cloth. But the Idiot is one who does something even when they are exempt, one who goes above and beyond. Now, we may think that this is what is sometimes translated as idiot, someone who is foolish, someone who is common in many places. And perhaps I should have had a text prepared to bring up on the screen, but I'm just thinking of this in the moment. I didn't plan to bring this out, but in many places we will see on Safaria and in many mainstream texts that Abiot is translated as someone common. And with our English understanding, our European understanding, our Europeanized understanding, we can falsely assume that that is, in a sense, belittling. To call the person common seems to denote that they are at a lower level of understanding. When in fact, this is the mentality of the elites. We see this very much with Rabbi Gamliel, who will often tell his students certain levels of halakha, and then he will do something that seems to contradict what he said. And his students are always asking him, like, oh, you told us to do this, but then you're doing this. So, and he'll say something like, well, I'm sensitive or I'm different. So again, this is an elite understanding, that of the Mekubalim, the B'nai Aliyah, at a higher level. So those who may be exempted from doing something, but do it anyway. So that was just a side bracket. But these three pillars, these three witnesses, the three Edot or Edim, the examination cloths, are encoded as such to set a balance. So again, as it says, the Tzniut, the Hatzniut, the modest among women are the ones that will prepare three cloths instead of two. So they're setting in balance, because anywhere that there's two, there's duality and polarity, which is a division, a divisive mindset. Anywhere that there's polarity, there's separation, there's hierarchy that gives way to egoic perception. And so when you have three pillars instead of two, you transcend duality, because that middle pillar denotes that transcendent quality of moderation, unity, unification. Hence, we have our right and left and middle pillars of Etz Chaim. Also bringing to mind in Patach Eliyahu, speaking of Etz Chaim as even a system of scales, how you have a left side and a right side of a scale, but the middle is the balance. The middle is the base. And we know that we do not deal in unjust scales, unequal weights. So that third pillar as a witness provides the perfect balance between extremes of perspective. Thus, the way of the extremely modest, who may even be the elite among the women, the very careful among the women, the very snealed among the women. Baruch Hashem, others joining. Shalom, shalom. Imbolo Kaiser. And shalom, shalom. Rabbi Zachariah. Lakai Moji. Toda Rabbi for joining.
Ravanit, I'm sorry, can I ask you something? I don't see how I can put a little hand to ask. I got lost in with the three, one for the husband, one for her, and who's the third one for?
The third one is for her, for a second witness, a second examination, which we'll get to in the next sentence, basically, when it refers to immediately after and then after a time. So this is what we're actually getting ready to read next.
Thank you, I apologize. I just lost the voice. Okay, thank you.
No problem at all. So we're gonna little bit. Now remember, we did read the full chapter last week, and now we're just going back to review some of the text and go into some of the codes. And for those who just came in, I'm using Safari on the screen for those who would like to follow along. However, let me stop the share again really quick. However, I am reading my translation out of the Mishnah Elucidated. So the wording will be a little different, but the Hebrew is the same. Edzehu achar zeman, kedei shetered min hamita, wetadiach peneha. So this speaks to what is after a time, enough time to wash her face. And this is a euphemism for washing her private parts, for the sneers again, for the modesty of language. After which she renders things impure retroactively, but not her husband. Rabbi Akiva says, yes, including her husband. Remember, again, as I was just delineating, when there's a machloket, a difference of opinion, this is not a contradiction or an opposition. This is bringing out the different levels of understanding according to the hierarchy. We have the mainstream, we have the common understanding, the common people, the Pashat level, and then we have the elites, the B'nai Aliyah. We have the Tzadikim, we have the Mekubalim in the levels of soul, who have that higher level of kavanah and intention, who have that higher level of stringency because they understand that delicacy, that delicate balance that is needed. So they will often go above and beyond, as again, the idiots. So Rabbi Akiva says, yes, including her husband, is rendered tameh retroactively. And the Chachamim, the sages, concede to Rabbi Akiva when she sees a stain, she renders tameh her partner. So washing the face symbolizes setting one's face. When we think of panim and achorayim, the face, the front and the back, we understand there's a state of revelation, that which is revealed, the face, and that which is concealed. What is this? In other words, this is a transitional moment. As it says, the time it takes for her to get down off of the bed and wipe her face. It's a transitional moment of returning to a state of concealing that which is behind the face, as privacy, intimacy, and blood, etc., is dominated and sanctified by Lilith of the Ahorayim, of the back. These are the concealed elements, that which is hidden, the interior, the secret, the sacred, the mysterious. We know this is also the feminine dimension, the dimension of the back, the dimension of the choshech. So this time lapse is a transitional period from the open portal of Yehud. And this is why it is important for Yehud to be done in sanctity, in private, and in darkness, in choshech, because of its high sacredness. And I just remembered from a limud of our Master Chief Rabbi Pinchas that he was speaking in Tikkunei Zohar, if I remember correctly, about the secret of revealing a secret. the secret behind the saying of when the wine pours in, the secret pours out. And so we must be very careful not to reveal secrets to an unprepared vessel, or what would otherwise be translated as a profane mind. But again, even that language is divisive and polarizing. When we understand in the Torah Aleph, there is no pure and impure, no front and back, no up and down, no higher or lower, better or worse. But the unprepared vessel is rather more appropriate language than to make an implication of impurity or lesser quality, because we don't create divisive language to create enemies based on egoic illusions and assumptions. We just understand some vessels are more prepared than others. Some vessels are more sensitive than others. And you have to prepare a vessel to be able to expand to receive certain light in the form of certain secrets. Again, secret, that which is hidden, the koshek. We know that light is koshek. Koshek is a light, the or haganuz, the black light. But it's also the highest level of light, the highest frequency of light that an unprepared vessel may shatter. And as I've often used the example of, we know that glass can shatter when you hear a very high pitch of music, or a high vocal note, a high frequency, because we know sound is really light. It's quantifiable frequencies we're talking about. So an unprepared vessel will shatter with too much light, especially that high, powerful intensity light that is the black light, the koshek, the or haganut. So again, an unprepared vessel, an unprepared mind, you don't reveal secrets to that mind, because it causes, as Chief Rabbi Pentecost explained, it causes Hakadosh Baruch Hu and the Shekinah to make Yikud uncovered, otherwise in public. So it's just something that I just remembered in this moment. So back to this wiping her face, setting this face, this transition from the open portal of Yikud in that Koshet, that high level of sacredness and sanctity, the exposure of the soul in the blood. And we know that Yikud is a blood covenant, because there is that exchange of DNA, of matter, of the Mayim Nukvin and the Mayim Duchin. So we understand that even in the case of a woman that is not Niddah in the sense of actually menstruating, during arguably every Yikud, there is a degree of blood that is shed in very minuscule ways, and science has proven this. So there are blood vessels that expand, and some break during even ordinary levels of zivug. So again, this is why we understand that to be a very sacred soul exchange. So to transition from that portal to now being able to put on that public face, in other words, the face that she can show to her children, to the rest of the world. We know that when, as a couple, as husband and wife, you have your sacred moment, but then you still have to have a transitional moment to come back to that modesty, to where you are again who you are to the rest of your family, who you are to your children when you leave that bedroom again. So setting her face, wiping her face, symbolizes this transition from the private face of the bedroom in that raw purity that raw vulnerability and spiritual transcendence, similar to the face of a woman giving birth. This is why this is also such a sacred moment. And this is also why, as a doula myself, I'm such an advocate for free birth, home birth, unassisted birth, because our bodies shut down when there are people witnessing that moment. Even that is a type of yikud. It's a portal moment. It's a portal between literally dimensions, between life and death. And when we think, if anyone's familiar with the New Zealand, the indigenous people of New Zealand, the Maori people, they have a practice called the haka. And it's very intense, and you often see, most recently there was a like a public hearing, and in the courthouse, these indigenous women came and they did the haka in the face of and in protest of, obviously, the colonization, the colonial imperialism that was oppressing them. And it was a very valiant, brave, and wonderful moment. It went viral a few months ago. But I'm reminded of that haka, that intensity, that primal sacredness, that raw purity in those moments when a woman is giving birth, and even when a woman is in yikud. And so this is the face that must be set by the wiping, symbolized by the wiping. But we do know that wiping the face is itself a euphemism for wiping the yesod, to examine for the presence of blood. And just a moment, I'm just going to turn my camera off because the baby is here. So we are going to skip ahead a little bit so we can get to the 5 colors. Okay, is everyone still hearing me okay?
Yes, we do, Ravanit, we do.
Good question. Mashel Mashlu Hakamim Ba'isha Weha Perotz Dor Weha Aliyah Dam HaCheder Tameh. נמצא בה פירות סדור, ספחות טמא, לפי שחזקתו מן המכור. So the sages made a comparison of the woman's yesod, her womb space, to different rooms. So the inner room denotes the womb. Ha'perot dor is the corridor. Ha'aliyah is the attic or the upper chamber. The blood of the inner room, ha'cheder, is tameh. Blood found in the corridor is doubtfully tameh, because the presumption is that it comes from Hamakor. Hamakor is the source. So because of doubt concerning the source, the presumption of blood in the corridor is that it is tameh. So they're taking a stringent approach to say, basically, when in doubt, do without. as the saying goes. When in doubt, consider it tameh. The five, here we are with the five bloods, the five colors. Chamisha damim tameim ba'isha. 5 types of tameh blood in woman. Ha'adom we'ha'shahor, red and black. Uwekeren karkom, that which is like the color of the horn of the saffron plant. Uchememe adama, that which is the color of mixed earth or mud. Wechemazub, the color of diluted wine. Beit Shammai omrim af b'maimai tiltan, uchemaimai basar zali tameh, ubeit Hillel metaharim. So Beit Shammai says that the discharge or the blood that is the color of fenugreek tainted waters, and that which is the color of roasted meat juices is tameh. Beit Hillel says that it is pure. Okay, went down too far. All right. Ha-yarok, the greenish yellow or the yellow green. Achavia ben mechalalel metame, wechakamim metaharim. So the color of yarok, Achavia ben mechalalel says that it is tameh, impure. The sages say it is pure. Amar Rabbi Meir, im eno metame mishum ketem, metame mishum mashke. Rabbi Meir says, if it is not impure as a stain, it is impure as a liquid, being one of the 7 liquids we spoke about last time. Rabbi Yoshe Omer, lo bach velo chach. Neither this nor that. Adzehu Adam Kadam Hamacha. What is red? The red of a wound. Shachor Chacharet. What is black? That which is like ink, or that which is scraped from the bottom of an ink well. Amok Miken Tameh. Anything that is more dark than this, the ink scraped from the bottom of an inkwell, is tameh. Dehemichen tahor. Anything that is lighter or more pale or weaker than this is considered pure. Uwe keren karkom ka baror shebo. And of that which is the color of the horn of the karkam, the cleanest or the clearest in it, which, as a side note, brings to mind baror sounds a lot like biror. The nullification during Pesach when we sweep or clean for getting rid of the comets. And it also reminds us a few weeks ago in the earlier Mishnah Niddah of sweeping the alley for the sharets, for those who remember. Ukememe adama, and that which is like the mud, mi bichaat beit kerem, u metzif mayim, that which is from the mixture of the earth, essentially from the valley of Beit Kerem, mixed with overflowing water. We'chamazuk shene halakim mayim, we'echad yayin min hayayin ha-sheronim. And that which is the color of diluted wine, that which consists of 2 parts water to 1 part wine, as the color of the wine from the region of the Sharon. And that is the end of that chapter, just as a refresher. One moment.
You're muted, Ima Hadassah.
Toda Rabbi. So the 5 colors of blood, we can understand when we see the number 5, on one level, we can understand that as referring to the hay. And the hay is always the feminine dimension. We remember that everything is encoded in 4s and 5s. When we consider the 4 letters of the tetragrammaton and the hidden 5th, which is the crown of the Yud. Yud He Vav He, and the crown of the Yud, corresponding with the 4 Olamot, which is really 5. The Abiyah, Atzilut, Beriah, Yetzirah, Asiyah, and the hidden Adam Kadmon. We know that the hay of the upper level, let's say, is Ima, Bina. And we know that the final hay is Nukva, Malkut. But again, in the Igul, or even we could say the Gagal stratification of the Sefirot and Etz Chaim, we know that there is no top and bottom, front and back, high and low. We know that everything is a circle, and in a circle, all points are equal. So Malkut is Bina. Even Bina has the roots of Keter. And we know Malkut is also called Atara, the crown, Keter. So when we think of the 5 levels of blood, we can also understand, going back to the red and black flame, the red and black blood representing 2 faces. And in Mishnah Sota 33b and 3, I believe, 333, that stood out to me. But in Sota 33b and 3, it says that the red and black are one and the same. The 5 levels, the 5 bloods, can also correspond with the 5 final letters, which represent constrictions, which are Kaf, Mem, Nun, Pe, and Sade. Also 5 Sefirot, or 5 levels of Sefirotic delineations, where the red corresponds to Gevura, pertaining to the red that is the blood of the wound. And that language is very important and very specific because the blood of the womb, the blood of the wound, I should say, a double entendre, Freudian slip, the blood of the wound, which some would say that the womb, the yesod, can look at times like a wound. So that is interesting. But the wound implies warfare. It implies a separation, a division. Anywhere that there's a wound, when we use that specific language, even as a wound is different from a cut, you could say that someone had a cut on their body, a laceration, something that has been separated, something that has been torn. We already see division in the fact that something that was whole, the skin, the flesh, is torn. There's division. But even more specifically, to call something a wound is directly implying the intention to harm or to hurt. Thus, when we think of a wound, we think of being wounded in battle, a battle scar. So the idea of war itself, contrary to what may be a popular worldly understanding, is a feminine aspect in the spiritual sense of what femininity is and what masculinity is, not in the social humanistic sense. When you understand that Bina is stratified and compartmentalized understanding that requires division to understand. That level of understanding requires you to separate concepts, separate ideas, separate things, to categorize them, to put them behind lines and in boxes, so to speak, to create a feminine structure of understanding, like that which a mother would impart to her child, a child who has to come to know the world by being explained what something is and what it is not. Therefore, a separation, a division, categorization, distinction, delineation, making rigid lines of separation. Hence, even the word delineation, a linearity through the division. So this implies polarity, duality, duplicity, plurality. And anywhere we see duality, we see division. This is a warlike mind. So contrary to popular opinion, while we would love to think of femininity from a social aspect as that which is soft and kind and gentle and warm, it is actually that which creates war. Because anytime you go to war with someone, you have to inherently see them as different from you. You have to see them as worse than you. You objectify them in a sense. And that's exactly what understanding comes from Ima, from mother. Mother being the first teacher. A parent teaches their baby, their child, something in terms of objectifying it, something that is outside of the self. And even the mother herself, in a point of natural child psychology, has to become distinct from the child. Science has proven that a child shares its mother's brain up until at least the age of 4, at least. So the child literally identifies itself as its mother until at least the age of 4. They've even done brain scans where they see that the same areas of the mother's brain lights up, the same area, of the child's brain lights up as the mother. The child responds the same way as the mother. And at some point in child psychological development, there's a differentiation process. It's all in the language. Differentiation from when the child begins to form its own identity and begins to understand very slowly that it is not merely an extension of its mother, but its own entity. And even in the womb, there's a process of embryonic differentiation where all children start out feminine, like the mother, literally female anatomically. And then through hormonal embryonic differentiation, there's a point where some, due to the father's chromosomes, some will turn into men or male children. So the blood of the wound implies separation. This is why this red corresponds to Gevura. Gevura, of course, again, is the left side, the left pillar of Et Chaim. When we're speaking from the Yashar structure, the masculine structure, the top-down structure. And this side of Gevura is the feminine side. So again, contrary to popular opinion, judgment, restriction, harshness, the element of justice, dinim, even punishment is from the feminine side. Mercy, chesed, kindness, generosity is the masculine side, the right side. The color black is the hod of Gevura. The black is the hod of Gevura, which we'll elucidate further later. The color of saffron, the karkom, is tiferet. And that which is the color of mud is associated with Binah, which is interesting because when we think of Binah as Ima, we think of the mother as birthing potential as a child, going back again to mother as the first teacher, cultivating the potential of one's child through imparting that intelligence and understanding. And when you think of Ima, in terms of the part Sufim, as the mother of Zeir Anpin, as a dam, we think of the earth. We know this red that is the color of mud, this mixture of earth and and water. Excuse me. So going back to why the black is considered the hod of Gevura. When we think of Netzach and hod respectively, we should understand that Netzach denotes something that is flowing, something that is active, an active emanation of what we call glory or splendor. Hod is something that is more withdrawn. And as I think of Netzach and Hod as the two thighs, as again, Nahi, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod, we think of the structure of two thighs, between which is the Yesod, the foundation. So Netzach and Hod as two thighs makes me think of, there's an American movie called Love Jones that some may be familiar with. And it's a movie about these poets who fall in love essentially. And the brother writes a poem about this woman, and he says, I'm the blues in your left thigh, trying to become the funk in your right. And when we think about music, we think of blues music. very slow, very contemplative, at times sorrowful. But if you really think about the blues, it's also about rumination and meditation. Often it deals with accountability, the choices that we make that lead to rectification. And funk music is very high energy, very active, very celebratory. But it can also be, especially in the 70s, in the 60s and 70s, if you think of funk music, a lot of times they were protest songs, they were political and politicized statements wrapped in this very jovial, active sounding music, active and activating sounding music. So again, we have this right thigh, the funk, the active, the movement, the kinetic motion, and the left thigh, which is slower. And so we think of this blues, even the blue, the connection between techelet, which is said to be this deep, dark blue that is black. And we think of some of our melanated people in Africa, the blue black people that we've always heard about. Even some of the depictions of deities or ancient beings that are worshipped in certain cultures. Some say that they are these original indigenous African beings whose skin was so deep blue black. So this blues in the left thigh, the hold, is the gevura of that blackness, something that is withdrawn, something that is congealed. And even as I said about the blues music is more contemplative. It's a rumination, it's a concentration, it's a meditation, and even the duality of concentration, that which denotes introspection and reflection, but also something that is more powerful, concentration, something that is dense, very highly dense, congealed, blood that is blocked, in a sense, stagnant, slow moving, denoting the stillness. So that is some of the encoding behind the black blood and the hold of Gevurot. I appreciate that encouragement. I did want to come back to the red of the mud, the earth waters, the Adama, because I always think, when I think of Adam and Adama, I think of earth, I think of the red clay of Georgia. I was born in Georgia, United States, the southern United States. And in many places in the deep South, we have this red clay earth. And likewise, in many parts of Africa, certainly Ghana, Congo, we have this red earth, this red dirt. And it is said, when the Mishnah defines this red earth, it is actually referring to a region in Galilee, which is also Sfat. Some say Safed, which is we could say the Mecca, the place of the Mekubalim, the highest level, the most famous, the most authentic of our Mekubalim came from the region of Safat or Galilee. And when we think of deep south, in fact, I believe it's Proto-Germanic language, south is Sud. So we think of deep south, this red earth of the south, this red earth even of Western, Central, and Southern Africa. The Deep South corresponds with the Deep Sod, the deep secrets. And as an African American, we know that our Southern African Americans are those who are acknowledged as having that higher connection, or that deeper, more authentic connection to the spirituality of our ancestors. The culture of the Deep South is much closer to indigenous African culture. And we are also acknowledged as having the more esoteric secrets. Those of us from the South and in the South know that there's a culture of the esoteric, the supernatural. Certain things happen in the South that we just don't see anywhere else. Strange things, very deep spiritual things. And again, it's in our culture. We have much more of that respect and reverence that is more aligned with our African continental family. So that Deep South, the Deep Sod, the deep secrets. And another thing that comes to mind about the color of the diluted wine the Mishnah defines as 2 parts water to 1 part wine. We know that chesed is water and wine is gewura. Wine is dinim. Wine is also linked to ima, bina, again, that divisive level of dualistic and polarized understanding. Bina, ima, Shekinah, even. Back to the hay. Hay is the number 5, the 5 colors. But this dilution of water, just like during the Kiddush, the secret of the Kiddush, is to sweeten the dinim, sweeten the gevurot with the chesed of the water. So the womb in general, rechem, as stated in the Zohar, is bina. And we can even think of bina as Beit Dinah, the house of judgment. Intelligence as the house of judgment. Remember, again, bina is this stratified, compartmentalized, dualistic, and polarized intelligence, understanding as judgment. Because again, to make a distinction, to make a comparison, to make a delineation, you have to separate 2 things to compare them. And anywhere that there's a comparison, a polarity, there's an opposition back again to the feminine dimension, the left side, as the side of war. Dinim, gevurot, bina, as the feminine mentality of war, division. So to judge something, you have to judge it in this understanding, not in the chokhmah, because there is another level of judgment that comes from unity. When there is no victim and perpetrator, when there is no guilty and no innocent. So that's another level of judgment. And this goes into the authenticity of the Torah Aleph and the training of the Dayanim, the training of the Dayan, the judges, according to our traditions, the tribal chiefs, who have the mentality of unity, to where judgment is not based on who is right and who is wrong, who took something from someone. It's not a judgment based on the perception of gains and losses. It's not a judgment based on the perception of, again, who is the perpetrator, who is the victim. It's a higher level of judgment from Chokhmah that sees the unity in both parties or both bodies, where 2 are 1. Which brings me also to something we explored in the limud of Sha'ar HaPesukim, the structure of the brain. The unrectified brain is divided into four parts, Chokhmah, Bina, and Da'at, being divided into two sections of 5 Chasadim and 5 Gevurot. And Lilith corresponds to the realm of Atzilut, the element of fire. And that fire can be arrogance, anger. And of course, in arrogance, you feel inherently that you're better than someone. Back to that divisive mindset. Something is higher, something is lower. Anger comes from a false egoic perception of loss or a threat of loss. Anger, there's a spectrum of emotion. I forget who, I don't want to say invented, but there's some scholar who is credited or cited as originating this spectrum of emotions. And essentially, all emotions are included in fear and love. So every emotion that we can think of, you can put them all into two boxes, either fear and love, according to this scholar. I forget their name right now. But anger is an offshoot of fear. Because again, anger only comes from, why are you angry? Because you're fearing that you're losing something, whether it's your pride, your dignity, something that is precious to you, something that is a threat to your mental or physical well-being, something that brings discomfort. So again, we speak of this sense of division. These are the emotions associated with Lilith that we are called to rectify. And when rectified, that fire, that esh, becomes righteous zeal. And it's a zeal, a passion to unify and not to divide. And it's also the fire that purifies through humbling us to, again, realize that we are one. So this is when Lilith is rectified. And by the way, Lilith is correspondent to Chokhmah as the light of Atzilut. And it is said when Lilith is in need of rectification, she is the vessel and CHAUAH is the light. But when rectified, Lilith is CHAUAH and is the light of Atzilut, the light of Chokhmah, the light of unity. Because remember, Lilith herself, the origin of Lilith, according to the Zohar, is the diminishment of the moon. So the inequality, when the sun and the moon were equal, were one. Their light was one and the same. But when the moon was diminished, that is when the phenomenon, the archetype that we understand as Lilith was created. So again, Lilith is not a name so much as an archetype, a state of being, a state that is born of inequality and oppression, which is why, again, I call her our sweet mother, because she reflects the inequality and oppression that we have manifested as our reality, or we have embodied. So we are one and the same in our collective and individual unrectified state. So like our mother Lilith, when we are rectified, we become unified and purified by that fire of Torah Aleph, which, by the way, Torah Aleph is called the Torah Esh, the Torah of fire. And purification, as the purification of the soul in Gehinom, that fire burns away the dross, from which pure gold is extracted and refined by being unified. So then that purification, that purifying fire, that Chokhmah, that wisdom, that Torah Aleph is that light of Atzilut. And this is that Chokhmah of unity. But going back again to Bina as Beit Dinah, the house of Dinim, the house of judgment. The left pillar, the left brain, which again in Patak Eliyahu, it says that the left brain is the heart that discerns or distinguishes between good and evil. Again, making difference. Distinction as division, war as cognitive dissonance, the inability to see another as the mirror, which in that mirror is oneness, echad. Love, in contrast to war, is ahava, echad, oneness, the ability to see oneness. And then in the act of rectification, then war itself becomes as a dance between equals in this mirroring. So Binah is Shekinah, which Shekinah is also called a house. Another concept we explored in another limud of Sha'ar HaPesukim, in which the feminine is codified and stratified at different levels. The Karka'ah, the desert, the wilderness, the uncultivated state of femininity, the femininity that is hardened, that is not receptive, that does not accept seed for any fruit to be born. And then we have Sadeh, obviously the field that is fertile, that is soft, that is yielding, that is open, that is receptive to receiving seed. Zerah as light, which in Da'atu Tevuna is the seed of man, is the mohin, the consciousness, the chabad, the chokmah bina da'at. The seed of man, Zerah, is light, the light of Or Ein Sof, that comes down and is disseminated through the Kav, which the Kav, again, as we explored in the limud of Niddah and the Halal and Hanukkah, the Kav is this androgynous corkscrew-like structure that is yashar, linear, and igul, circular, simultaneously, like a corkscrew. Which, by the way, we use the corkscrew to open the wine, don't we? The wine, back to the theme of the wine. The corkscrew is androgynous. It is yashar and igul simultaneously. The line goes in the middle and all the circles surround it. This is the kav of the Tzimtzum, what we talk about, the phenomenon known as the Tzimtzum. This is the kav that disseminates the light of water and soft from the halal, and is the birth of the Sefirot, disseminating light throughout the Sefirot, throughout the vessels. This Kav, in its androgyny, which we also discussed pertaining to the androgyny of the letter Lamed, which Lamed itself is Kaf, the letter Kaf, and Vav, 26, which is also which is also Hashem, the gematria of Hashem. So all of these codes coming together. So I went on a digression there. I forgot what I was going to say in connection to that, but it's all right. It needed to come through. Anyway, Bina as the Shekinah. And we discussed Ima Ila'ah, the cause of causes. Bina is Ima Ila'ah, the womb portal as the mother of all sources. And we even use this language in American culture. Certainly we say, like, that was the mother of whatever. Like, the highest one, the greatest one, the most intense one, the biggest one. So the mother of all causes, Ima Ila'a, the mother of all sources, the beginning of all beginnings, the portal of all cycles, all Gilgulim. Gilgulim, this series of beginnings and beginnings and beginnings. And if Binah is a womb, Rahim, we know that the womb is the beginning of all beginnings, because the womb is a place where dinim are generated for the sake of life. And that seems to be a paradox, because you think of dinim in terms of harshness, in terms of punishment, in terms of those which could threaten life even, ordeals, pain, suffering. Again, all of these are egoic illusions, because all of these are in fact refinements as rectification, things that purify us through humbling us. And remember, this physical world of physical incarnation is the stage upon which rectification is enacted, not only in our earthly human lives, but in all the world, because all of the worlds were damaged. The realm of Atzilut was rectified completely by Ein Sof. However, Beria, Yetzirah, and Asiya have to be rectified through our actions, through our incarnation, through our rectifications. And this is the purpose of mitzvot and kavanot, to enact those rectifications, not just in the physical realm, but our rectification through kavanot and through mitzvot actually causes rectification in the sefirot, in the partsufim, in the olamot. So how great is our position to be the rectifiers of the entire cosmos. So again, this physical realm in which we are born, into which we incarnate through the womb portal, the mother of all causes, for the very cause of enacting rectification. Through this womb, this portal, all lives, all of us are born through this series of cycles, this series of lives, reincarnation, to embody this process of tikkun and teshuvah. Teshuvah means to return. And indeed, through the womb, Bina, Ima, we continuously return, cyclically. Hence, Hagilgulim. So we understand that the five bloods, the five colors are five gevurot. Five, and reminding us of the hay, of Ima, Bina, and Malkut, which, as I spoke about in the Limud for Tu B'Av, mother and the daughter, which we can see Nukba again as a daughter-in-law, because Nukba is the wife of Zianabim, the son of Ima. So in a sense, the daughter-in-law, Nukba, mirrors and indeed is inseparable from the mother, Ima. And when rectified, that final hay, Malkut, becomes Bina, becomes Keter, as again, Malkut is called HADARA, the crown of her husband. And so blood in this house that is Rechem, this house that is Bina, is potential or unactualized tikkun, unactualized judgment, because this fetus being brought forth, this spark of light that is being shaped and formed, is potential or unactualized judgment embodied that is to be released to be sweetened as a detoxification or purification that has not been gestated. And this extends to what we will explore next week in chapter 3 of Mishnah Niddah, that speaks about abortions and miscarriages and non-viable fetuses and the sandal fetus. So I will land here, giving us something to look forward to for next week's Limud, speaking about the miscarriages and the secret of the sandal fetus. So, Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen, Amen. Toda Rabah for your time and your patience.
Amen, amen.
Toda.
תודה רבה.
Shabbat Shalom and Shavua Tov.
שבוע טוב, אמא.